China's holdings of U.S. Treasuries skid to 12 months low. Japan also cuts holdings. New York. China's holdings of U.S. Treasuries tumbled in April to their lowest since May 2010, records showed on Wednesday, with Chinese traders possibly slicing losses as Treasury costs fell after Federal Reserve officers signaled widespread rate hikes to temper soaring inflation. Chinese holdings dropped to $1.003 trillion in April, down $36.2 billion from $1.039 trillion the preceding month, in step with U.S. Treasury Department figures. China's inventory of treasuries in May 2010 became $843.7 billion, information confirmed. The reduction in Treasury holdings may additionally have been geared toward diversifying China's forex holdings, analysts stated. The Chinese income contributed to a drop in typical overseas holdings of treasuries in April that helped propel yields higher. U.S. benchmark 10-year Treasury yields began April with a yield of 2.3895%, and surged roughly 55 foundation factors to 2.9375% by way of the give-up of the month. Japan's holdings of U.S. Treasuries fell similarly in April to their lowest due to the fact January 2020, amid a persistent decline in the yen as opposed to the dollar, which may additionally have brought about Japanese buyers to promote U.S. belongings to benefit from the trade price. Japanese holdings fell to $1.218 trillion in April, from $1.232 trillion in March. Japan remained the most important non-U.S. holder of treasuries. Overall, foreign holdings of treasuries slid to $7.455 trillion, the lowest because April 2021, from $7.613 trillion in March. On a transaction foundation, U.S. Treasuries saw net overseas outflows of $1.152 billion in April, from Internet new overseas inflows of $48.795 billion in March. This became the first outflow due to the fact that October 2021. The Federal Reserve, at its coverage meeting in March, raised benchmark interest quotes with the aid of 0.25 percentage point. It lifted quotes through 50 bits per second in May, however on the June Policy Assembly on Wednesday lifted charges by means of a hefty 75 bits per second to stem a disruptive surge in inflation. The Fed additionally projected a slowing economy and growing unemployment in the months to come back. In other asset lessons, foreigners sold U.S. equities in April amounting to $7.1 billion, from Internet outflows of $94.338 billion in March, the most important on account that at least January 1978, while the Treasury Department commenced retaining tune of this data. Foreign investors have sold shares for 4 consecutive months. U.S. company bonds, on the other hand, posted inflows in April of $22.587 billion, from March's $33.38 billion, the largest seeing that March 2021. Foreigners were Internet customers of U.S. corporate bonds for 4 directly months. U.S. citizens, meanwhile, reduced their holdings of long-term foreign securities, with net income of $36.7 billion, facts confirmed.